Lions fans, let us cut straight to the heart of what is keeping every honest member of this fan base up at night heading into the 2026 season. It is not Jared Goff. It is not the offensive line. It is not Jameson Williams or Amon-Ra St. Brown or whether Jahmyr Gibbs can replicate his explosive 2025 campaign. The single biggest question mark hanging over this Detroit Lions team right now. The one variable that could determine whether this is finally the year the franchise breaks through to a Super Bowl or another season of regular season excellence undermined by the same recurring problem is the health of this defense. Specifically, the health of one safety duo that when both players are on the field together and fully operational, might be the best safety tandem in the entire National Football League. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. When they are healthy, this defense has a ceiling that nobody in the NFC wants to think about. When they are not, the Lions have spent 6 straight years proving exactly how far that ceiling drops. Let us start with the offense, because there is genuinely very little to worry about on that side of the football, and the optimism is completely earned. This offense has proven itself over 6 consecutive years under multiple different circumstances, multiple different offensive coordinators, and even through the disruption of losing a head coach's primary offensive disciple to another franchise. Even in transition years, even at the start of a season when continuity is still being established, this offense has remained a top 5 unit by the midway point of every single year it has existed in its current form. Jared Goff has averaged somewhere in the range of 4,500 to 4,700 passing yards in recent seasons, and there is no reason to believe that production drops off significantly in 2026 provided the offensive line continues to hold up and the receiving core stays as deep and dangerous as it currently is. The tight end room alone tells you everything about how well constructed this offense has become. Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, Tyler Conklin, and now Jackson Meeks, the converted wide receiver who has been catching everything thrown his way in practice and looks like he has a legitimate shot at making this roster as a 4th tight end with real receiving value. That kind of depth at a single position is the sign of a front office that understands exactly what kind of multiple, flexible offensive packages this coaching staff wants to deploy. The receiver room with St. Brown, Williams, Tez Johnson developing, and Greg Dortch added as a younger, faster, quicker version of what Khalif Raymond provided this offense in recent years gives Goff every weapon he needs to keep producing at an elite level. The offensive line is stacked. The running back room with Gibbs as the clear lead back getting the overwhelming majority of touches, somewhere in the range of 85% of the workload, with Isaiah Pacheco handling complementary duties and pass protection situations, is about as deep and dangerous as any backfield in the league. But the defense, that is where the real conversation needs to happen. And it needs to happen honestly rather than with the kind of optimistic spin that gets recycled every single offseason before reality reasserts itself in November and December. Look at the recent statistical history of this Detroit defense and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. 26th, 16th, 20th, 32nd. Those are not the rankings of a unit that has figured out how to be consistently good, let alone elite. This is a defense that has had talent thrown at it year after year, draft picks invested, free agents signed, and the results have simply not matched the level of investment. And the explanation that keeps recurring season after season is injuries. Key players going down. Players being pushed back onto the field before they are actually ready. The cumulative attrition of a position group that cannot stay whole long enough to develop the chemistry and continuity that great defenses require. Here is the uncomfortable truth that this organization needs to fully internalize heading into 2026. No more excuses. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. If the pattern has been bringing in players with injury histories and then watching those injuries recur, the solution starts with being more disciplined about who gets added to this roster in the first place. And if the pattern has been pushing players who are dinged up back onto the practice field and into games before they are fully recovered, the solution is obvious and overdue. Stop doing that. Hold players out. Manage the long-term health of this roster with the same intelligence and discipline that championship organizations apply to every other aspect of their operation. Brian Branch's situation last season is the example that should serve as the cautionary tale for everything that needs to change. Branch was dealing with injury issues throughout the year, and the organization continued to push him onto the field rather than allowing him the time he needed to fully heal. The result was a torn ligament that ended his season and that now has him on a recovery timeline that likely keeps him out for at least the first half of the 2026 regular season, possibly starting the year on the physically unable to perform list. That is not bad luck. That is the predictable consequence of an organizational pattern that prioritizes short-term availability over long-term health, and it cost this team one of its most important defensive playmakers for an extended stretch of the season. And now the Kerby Joseph situation looms over this entire defensive outlook in a way that should make every Lions fan genuinely nervous. Joseph and Branch, when both healthy and on the field together, form arguably the best safety duo in professional football. Joseph has a natural knack for generating turnovers that simply cannot be taught or replicated through scheme or coaching. Some players have that instinct for finding the football, anticipating quarterback decisions a half second before they happen, and putting themselves in position to make the spectacular play. Joseph has it. Branch has it. Together, they give this secondary a ball-hawking, game-changing dimension that elevates an otherwise good defense into something genuinely special. But Joseph's health right now is a legitimate question mark, and the honest assessment is that nobody outside the organization's medical staff knows exactly how serious the concern is heading into training camp. The good news, and it is genuinely good news worth celebrating even in its smallness, is that Joseph showed up to Team Media Day in full uniform, smiling, taking pictures, looking like a player who is engaged and optimistic about where his recovery currently stands. Anyone who has watched this team closely knows that both Dan Campbell and Kerby Joseph wear their emotions on their faces in a way that makes them terrible at hiding how they actually feel. If Joseph is smiling at Media Day, and Campbell is not projecting the kind of visible concern that has accompanied serious injury situations in the past, that is meaningful, even if it is not definitive proof that everything is fine. The reality the Lions face if Joseph cannot go for an extended period is genuinely challenging. The team would be forced to lean on Von Bell and Chuck Clark as the primary safety options, with Clark specifically brought in this offseason not just for his on-field ability, but for his demonstrated leadership qualities. Clark has already shown in his short time with this organization that he understands how to communicate, how to organize the unit, and how to hold teammates accountable in ways that go beyond just playing his position well. If Joseph is out and Branch is working his way back from injury, Clark becomes the steadying veteran presence this secondary desperately needs, and his value as a leader could end up mattering just as much as his on-field production. The good news, if there is a silver lining to be found in this situation, is that the Lions have genuinely improved their roster construction philosophy this offseason in ways that should help mitigate some of these recurring problems going forward. The organization made a series of decisions that signal a more disciplined approach to roster building. They did not bring back certain players whose injury histories made them risky long-term investments. They let other veterans go in favor of younger, healthier options who have to earn their roster spots through performance rather than reputation. They have been explicit that players like Terrion Arnold need to continue earning their roles. that the timeline for players like Ennis Rackstraw is genuinely uncertain if health concerns persist, and that the same standard applies to virtually every player on this roster regardless of draft status or contract size. That kind of organizational discipline applied consistently is exactly what a team with this level of defensive talent attrition needs to start breaking the cycle. The cap situation also gives this front office real flexibility to address needs as the season unfolds. The Lions are sitting on approximately $19 million in cap space, which ranks middle of the pack across the league, but represents a genuinely healthy position given the financial complications this organization navigated coming into this offseason. If the team is performing well through the first half of the regular season and a specific roster need emerges, whether at safety, at pass rush, or anywhere else on the roster, the front office has the financial flexibility to make an aggressive move at the trade deadline. This is not a team that is going to sit on its hands if injuries or performance issues create a clear gap that outside talent could address. The expectation throughout the organization is that aggressive moves get made if the team is in genuine playoff contention through the midpoint of the season and given the talent already on this roster. That contention status feels less like a hope and more like a realistic expectation. The breakout candidates worth watching as this team heads toward training camp deserve specific attention because they represent the kind of internal development that championship rosters need beyond simply adding outside talent. On offense, Tez Johnson has the tools to take a significant step forward after a rookie season that produced modest yardage but 6 touchdowns on just 16 catches, an efficiency rate that suggests real explosive upside once his route running and overall comfort in the offense continue to develop. Greg Dortch profiles as exactly the kind of undervalued, versatile slot weapon who could end up being far more important to this offense than his name recognition currently suggests, following directly in the footsteps of what Khalif Raymond provided for multiple seasons. On defense, Jimmy Rolder deserves specific attention as the rookie who has shown the kind of anticipation and natural football instincts that simply cannot be taught. 2 interceptions already in early offseason work, a reactive quickness that translates directly to turnover production, and the kind of mental processing speed at the position that separates merely talented players from genuinely impactful ones. If Rolder continues developing at this rate through training camp, there is a realistic scenario where he forces his way into a more significant defensive role by midseason, particularly if the coaching staff decides his turnover-generating ability is too valuable to keep off the field in nickel packages. The bottom line heading into the 2026 season is this: the offense is going to be elite regardless of what happens elsewhere on this roster. That side of the ball has proven itself across 6 consecutive years and shows no signs of regression. The defense has the talent on paper to finally take the step forward that this organization has been chasing since the moment this current core was assembled. Whether that step actually happens depends entirely on health. Specifically, it depends on whether Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph can get back on the field together and stay there, and whether this organization has genuinely learned the lesson that pushing injured players back too soon costs you far more than it gains you. No more excuses. The path to a Super Bowl runs directly through getting this defense healthy and keeping it that way through 17 regular season games and beyond. Lions fans, the floor is yours, and we want your most honest takes right now. How worried are you about the Kirby Joseph situation heading into training camp, on a scale from cautiously optimistic to genuinely panicked? Do you believe this defense finally breaks its recent pattern of underperformance and becomes a legitimate top-half unit in the NFC? And who is your breakout candidate for this Lions roster heading into 2026? Drop everything you have got in the comments section right now, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel because training camp is coming fast and this is going to be one of the most important seasons in franchise history. Let's go Lions!